Today on NewsWatch, he went from murdering Christians to being one himself. How God is winning the hearts of ISIS terrorists in the Middle East. Plus, making a difference, why one American Christian is bringing love and inspiration to women in the Holy Land.
God's judgment on America and his hand of judgment, which is very obviously here, will put us down on our knees until we look up.
The surprising truth about the church in America and the one thing that can turn this nation around. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. As Islamic State fighters continue to slaughter and behead Christians and others, some terrorists are reportedly having encounters with Christ. A Middle East missionary says a jihadist teacher for ISIS has turned to the Bible because he became sick of the killing. Gary Lane has more.
The story of a Saudi sheikh, an Islamic trainer for ISIS, is the latest of several reports about jihadists either converting to Christianity or desiring to learn more about the faith. An Operation Mobilization missionary named Julian provided the latest story to Todd Nettleton on the Voice of the Martyrs radio show. Julian said the sheikh was traveling home from Lebanon when he asked a taxi driver for a Bible.
The taxi driver knew a Christian worker in Beirut who was very happy to give the guy with the beard the Bible. And then, "Sir, would you like to tell us why you're looking for a Bible?" And his response was, "I'm from Saudi, I'm a sheikh, which means a teacher of Islam. I've been in Syria teaching the ISIS fighters Jihad 101, the theology and practice of jihad. I'm sick of the killing."
Wow.
There must be something better than this.
He had come to see that the violence of ISIS was not the path to peace. He was tired of it. He wanted something else. And so he was interested in having a Bible.
A growing number of former Muslims around the world report coming to Christ after having a dream or vision of Jesus. ISIS members are no exception. Julian also told of an ISIS fighter who had a vision of the cross and then stumbled onto a Christian website. That terrorist later became a believer after meeting a Christian in Turkey. Nettleton said he believes Julian's accounts are credible.
He's a worker with decades of experience in the Middle East. He's lived there. He speaks the language. He knows the culture, knows the people. So it's reputable because of his credibility and because of OM's credibility. But it's also a credible story because it's consistent with what we're hearing from that part of the world, from our own VOM staff, as well as from church leaders and other Christians there.
And just last month, a youth with a mission field worker told the story of an ISIS fighter who enjoyed killing Christians. He left Islam for Christianity after Jesus appeared to him in a dream. And ISIS is also having an unintended impact on some other Middle East Muslims.
And it's not the effect necessarily that they want. What it's forcing Muslims to do is it's forcing them to examine their own faith. Many Muslims look at ISIS and they look into the Quran and they say, wait a minute, if that's Islam, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
The country of Greece is racing to develop a new bailout plan with Europe that will prevent it from total financial collapse. The Prime Minister made an impassioned call for a new deal at a meeting of the European Parliament today. Greece faces a Thursday deadline to present a detailed rescue plan. On Sunday, a European Union summit will consider it. Sunday's meeting is considered the final chance to save Greece from economic ruin. If the Union does not approve Greece's plan, it could eject Greece from the Eurozone. Well, get ready for more big hikes in your health care costs. That's thanks to the Affordable Care Act. The New York Times reports insurance companies are trying to raise rates by 20 to 40% across the country. The companies say it's all because of the new customers added under Obamacare, and they are much sicker than they expected. In Oregon, the insurance commissioner has approved 25 and 33% increases for two companies in 2016. Minnesota could see some of the biggest spikes, with Blue Cross Blue Shield seeking rate hikes of 54%. Heroin-related deaths in the U.S. have quadrupled in the past decade. A new report by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that the number of heroin users rose by nearly 300,000 in the last 10 years. Use of the drug grew among different income levels in different parts of the country, but it more than doubled among whites and women. Experts think the increase was driven by people switching from prescription opioid painkillers to cheaper heroin. The report found that people who abuse opioid painkillers were 40 times more likely to abuse heroin. San Francisco's sheriff is blaming U.S. immigration officials after an illegal immigrant murdered a woman at a popular sightseeing spot. Francisco Sanchez was charged in the death of Catherine Steinle. She was shot and killed last Wednesday while she and her father were walking on Pier 14. Sheriff Ross Mirkarimi is defending his office's decision to release Sanchez last April. He says immigration officials should have issued an arrest warrant since Sanchez had a long criminal record and had been deported 5 times. Sanchez was back on the streets after San Francisco officials disregarded a request from federal authorities to keep him locked up. San Francisco is one of dozens of cities and counties across the U.S. that does not cooperate completely with the federal government on immigration, calling itself a sanctuary for people in the country illegally. The incident has reignited the debate over illegal immigration. Virginia Republican and chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Gutlatt, says both sides are wrong. He believes federal authorities could have acted in this case and gotten Sanchez out of the country.
ICE knows about San Francisco's sanctuary policy. It's a bad policy, but they know about it. Why did they ever turn him over to them when they could have deported him again?
The White House says Republicans are at fault for not supporting the president's immigration reform. Well, the Christian bakers who refused to make a cake for a lesbian wedding are standing strong in their beliefs after the latest round of fines brought against them. Last Thursday, an Oregon labor commissioner ordered the Kleins to pay $135,000 in emotional damages to the lesbian couple they refused to make the cake for. Then he ordered the couple to cease and desist from openly professing that they won't serve gay weddings because of their Christian beliefs. CBN News visited Aaron and Melissa Klein in Oregon this week. The couple says they were shocked by the gag order.
You're looking at a government agency telling a private individual what they can and cannot say. This should scare every American. That's downright scary. That the government that was put in place to protect our freedoms is now stripping them away from us.
I don't see how somebody can tell me to be quiet. And frankly, I'm not going to be quiet about my faith. No, I mean, it's my faith, and I should have every right to talk about it.
Klein's plan to appeal the ruling. Will have more on the Klein's case next week on the 700 Club. Evangelist Luis Palau is covering America's largest city with the gospel message. His team will lead a massive festival in Central Park this coming weekend. They've been working with churches across the Big Apple for months to reach the city. Many call the big city the perfect place for God to reap an incredible harvest.
8 million people fill the streets and the subways of New York City on any given day. And they speak more than 200 languages. But the big city can still be a lonely place.
New York is the 3rd least church city in the U.S. in proportion to population. So it's a big challenge, but it's a joyful one.
Tackling the challenge for the last few months, Evangelist Luis Palau has partnered with many of those churches, nonprofit organizations, businesses, and the government to work and serve the city in a project called City Serve. And on July 11th, he'll host a celebration in Central Park called City Fest.
In New York, there is about 4 million Spanish-speaking people from all over Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Spain too. And so one of the great thrills for us is that as Latins, we can praise Jesus Christ, we can thank the United States, and we can thank New York City for allowing us to come in here, to educate our children, to have freedom of worship, to be able to enjoy the good things of the U.S., to succeed economically even.
In advance of the Central Park meeting, that celebration has extended across the tri-state area of New York, producing fruit like this meeting in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where thousands answered the call to accept Christ. The prayer is for an even greater response in New York Central Park.
The goal would be that 22 million people in the greater New York area would hear the voice of God, would hear the gospel.
And certainly something for people to be praying for. Once again, the celebration will happen in New York City on July 11th. Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson confirms that he is dating singer Ciara. Speaking at Rock Church in San Diego Sunday, he made clear they are abstaining from sex. Wilson says God spoke to him about Ciara when he asked her, "What would you do if we just took all that extra stuff off the table and just did it Jesus's way?" He said she completely agreed. He also said, "If you can love somebody without that, then you can really love somebody." And he told the congregation, "I need you to pray for us." Wilson also spoke about the Seahawks' last-second Super Bowl loss to the Patriots. He says God spoke to him a few seconds after he threw the interception.
And God says to me, like I said again, he says to me, he goes, "I'm using you." Take another 3 steps, and he goes, "I want to see how you respond, but most importantly, I want them to see how you respond." And being a Christian, you know, I think sometimes as Christians we lose this. We lose this idea of like everybody's supposed to be perfect, you know, and everything's going to happen just like when you're a believer, when you're a follower of Christ, everything's going to fall in place the way you want it to. Boom, 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 boom. But that's not it, because otherwise we wouldn't have to use Jesus. We wouldn't have to be there. He wouldn't be necessary in our lives to help us through things. And like it says in James 1, it says, "Consider it pure joy when you go through trials and tribulations."
If you want to see more, you can find a link to the rest of the Russell Wilson interview with the Rock Church and even hear him share the gospel. That link is at cbnnews.com. Coming up, some people call it a wasteland, but others see it as a land of opportunity. Meet the American Christian who's offering her expertise to the women of the Negev. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton says she opposes the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement against Israel. In a letter to the American Jewish organizations, Clinton says the movement seeks to punish Israel and dictate how Israelis and Palestinians should try to resolve the conflict. She is asking Jewish leaders for advice on how to fight back against further attempts to isolate and delegitimize Israel. Last week, the United Church of Christ endorsed the BDS movement, but the Zionist Organization of America is praising the Episcopal Church's decision to reject BDS and the Mennonite Church's decision to defer a vote until 2017. The president of the Zionist organization says the BDS campaign ignores the genuinely racist Palestinian program seeking a Jew-free Palestinian state. BDS is simply a vicious campaign for the eventual disappearance of Israel. Well, Israel's Negev desert is becoming a vibrant part of the Jewish state. It is a dream first envisioned by Israeli founder David Ben-Gurion. And now many women are taking part in that goal with help from an American friend. Here's Chris Mitchell from the Negev desert.
From pottery to bicycles to a bed and breakfast, many businesswomen of Israel's Negev are starting to make a difference. The Negev desert makes up more than half of the landmass of Israel. Some people call it a wasteland, but others see it as a land of opportunity. Ben-Gurion, for example, saw the Negev as a place where Israelis would be tested in order to populate the wilderness and make it flourish.
Possibilities are endless in the Negev.
American Christian Beth Eastern exudes optimism about the women and the region. Eastern, a Colorado businesswoman, heard about the need here and answered the call.
The state of Israel needs to really get it that there are so many Americans, true Americans, that are Christians that would give up almost anything to help them, that they're on their side, that they're not here alone.
Einat Doron has lobbied on behalf of women entrepreneurs for years and found an ally in Eastern.
I was alone in this thing. Everything was on my back, and I feel that with her I can share ideas and stuff. And I think she brings us things from abroad.
They asked me, would you please come and talk to the women of the Negev region and help them, find their niche.
Eastern now works with many of the businesswomen in the Negev. Shmuel Rifman, the mayor of one of the Negev's regions, appreciates her investment.
Time is something taken for granted. Money comes and goes. But the way Beth Eastern is investing her time and the efforts that she's putting in is hard to believe.
Many of the businesswomen say Eastern is making a difference. One way is promoting their products on the intranet.
Well, she's actually connecting us. She's actually helping us support this forum of women and connecting us out to overseas. As we know, Israel is small. The Negev is a small part of Israel. So she's sort of connecting us more to the outside world. And I think this is very important.
For Shahar and Ruthie, both potters, it meant a boost in confidence.
It meant a lot for me. I think you feel like there's somebody that is there for you, you know?
She gave me courage. She gave us hasha'ah, inspiration.
The Negev is rich in biblical history where men like Abraham once walked. Eastern sees a bright future for this land. And for this businesswoman, the bottom line is love.
My ultimate goal, I think, is to show the Jewish community down there that the Christian side is very much on their side and that we love them very much.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Negev Desert.
Up next, we just celebrated America's birthday, but how many more do we have left? Why some leaders say that without revival, America is headed for the ash heap of history. Just this past Saturday, America marked its 239th Independence Day, the birth of what many consider the greatest nation on earth. But as Paul Strand reports, many Americans worry that the country has fallen so far from its historic values that it's doomed unless it makes a serious U-turn.
This time of year, Americans are used to celebrating the nation's birthday and its greatness, but they may soon be mourning its downfall. That's the conclusion of researcher George Barna and historian David Barton in their book, U-Turn, Restoring America to the Strength of Its Roots.
These authors say that the U.S. is entering its own version of the Dark Ages, that any civilization that's gone where America is headed now has gone to ruin.
The founders gave us an amazing foundation, and for us to trample on it and say we're going to build a new one is folly.
The authors point out those early Americans were shaped by the Bible and a Judeo-Christian worldview.
They believed everybody should read through the Bible cover to cover once a year. That's what we did in school. That's what we did in spiritual life. That's what political leaders did. Not today. We can't even get Christians to read that word.
Today, only 30% of Christians read the Bible and less than 10% from cover to cover. And it shows.
Only 9% of born-again Christians have a biblical worldview. Only 51% of pastors have a biblical worldview.
It's led to a complete change in values over 240 years. Then, service to others ruled the day.
Your order of responsibilities is God, country, and family. And so that's part of the biblical thinking they had, which is why the Founding Fathers were told, and specifically taught in schools, we have their textbooks, if someone comes to you and say, we need you to run for office, you're not allowed to say no. You said, I will run. Because, as they point out, your life doesn't belong to you.
Today, it's all about me.
Now we're just worried about comfort and experiences and entertainment and security.
That's led to a world of things that can pile up the kind of debt that can kill a country.
The average American family, they're looking usually at a mortgage debt of about $130,000. They're usually looking at credit card debt of about $21,000. They're looking at a car debt of about $23,000, a college loan debt of about $24,000. And so we're so far in debt that we tolerate it in others.
Like our federal government.
Where we are right now, it will take 107 years of the full production of the American economy to pay off the debt we have right now. We are at a point now where 60% of Americans receive more from the government than what they put in. You can't sustain that.
Compare that to what Thomas Jefferson said.
We can live in debt and extravagance, but we'll be in slavery, or we can be free, but we have to use frugality. George Washington said, avoid occasions of expense. If you want to stay out of debt, just quit spending. And so the Founding Fathers very, very, very clear that what would destroy a nation is debt.
So where's that indicate America's headed?
Into the ash heap of history.
Reverend Sam Rohr invited Barna and Barton to address this gathering of the Pennsylvania Pastors Network because he wants a different outcome.
God's judgment on America and his hand of judgment, which is very obviously here, will put us down on our knees until we look up.
Church folks often say, look at what those people are doing to wreck our country. But Barna and Barton found in their research over and over again that church people are just as guilty as their government, as secular people, of the same kind of ruinous behaviors that are taking the nation down.
In a country that between 78–80% say they're Christian, but only 34% believe in absolute moral truth.
Barna on a regular basis asks Christians and non-Christians about 70 moral categories. And these days, he's finding no substantive statistical difference between Christians and non-Christians when it comes to most moral issues.
Stop pointing the finger and look at ourselves and say, are we really the church that Christ died on the cross for?
Rohr says the church should be confessing to God.
We are the problem. We have walked away from you, and the culture has followed us, not the other way around.
Barna says today's Americans believe they're smarter than the founders, maybe because of education and technology. But the founders had that biblical foundation.
They didn't have all the things that we think are necessary to have a sophisticated society today. But the key isn't sophistication. You know, it's wisdom, it's discernment, it's love, it's grace.
And so until we get back into God's plan and know what His plan is, we'll never get the nation back to where it needs to be.
Today we think that mankind has evolved. We're smarter and wiser than those people who founded the country hundreds of years ago. And yet they were so wise that they founded the greatest nation on the earth, while today's generation are well on their way to losing it. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Lancaster Bible College.
And finally, today, a touching video is making its way around social media. Two men set out to help others by paying for their groceries, capturing the power of giving. One after another, unsuspecting customers in the Cincinnati area go to pay for their groceries, but they're beaten to the cash register by Rob Westerman from SNC Norwood Church. Mike Lewis from Jesus Painter Ministries is secretly recording the shoppers' stunned reactions, many of them blown away by the random act of kindness. The full video can be shared from the Jesus Painters Ministries Facebook page. Great way to start the day, and that is it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. And we hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.